famously, they said, Rome created a desert and called it peace. So it's not as if the Romans were not familiar with the idea of imposing their will, their overcode upon any given peoples. And so the question, I think, ultimately is, was liberalism simply the ideology that was around when scale met this ability to impose itself globally? Is it the fact that Anglo-liberalism simply was the most successful ideology at the time in which the ability to scale and force a way of life onto the globe happened to be available? Is it a technological was it just the ideology that was driving the car when the technology to do this arrived? Or is there something very inherent to liberalism where it must become it must become the idol at the top of the summit? It has no choice. But if it's going to expand, if it's going to go through its way of life, must it assume that particular role, or is it just a happy accident of the technology catching up with the state of empires at that time?
I'll respond quickly to that. Two sort of germs of what could be sort of threads to follow. I mean, the first and most basic one is to say that modernity, and by that I mean, I don't mean what we've got now. I mean, again, paleo-modernity. That's to say, capitalism, technology, modern science, I think are integral to even paleoliberalism. I mean, I think it's in the 17th century, the liberalism came together, modern science was initiated, capitalism. I mean, I get you can trace capitalism back to Venice, but industrial capitalism, I think, is English and belongs to the same thing. The motto of the Royal Society, nullius in verba, I think is again the empty summit. I think it's like basically a liberal social technology that initiated modern science. So in that sense, I don't think there's a coincidence about it. I think there's a tragic necessity that this liberal formation unleashed enormous power, technical, military, industrial power, and that fueled its globalization, and its globalization, as I think we're all agreed, led to its catastrophic demise. So, I think that there's these deep forces of necessity. And the only other thing very quickly I'd say is I think that there are strands where it persists, and where you should look for it is again in social technologies. I think, what is the paleoliberalism that persists in the modern world? I think it's the internet. I think it's cryptocurrencies. I think it's AI on the machine learning model to do with distributed neural nets, the model for AI that's again been explosively successful. I think that those are liberal technologies. They require a liberal mindset to do with decentralization, the empty summit. Without those things, sort of notoriously the internet began because they said, look, in a nuclear exchange, any central command node would be exterminated. So we have to build a system out of military necessity that is intrinsically decentralized enough to survive a nuclear attack. So, it's exactly programmatically a liberal social and technological project. So maybe I'm drifting a little bit off your question with that second part. The first part, I would say, yes, there's deep necessity about the way this has all played out. Yeah.
So I have some remarks, but if we consider how great the technological achievements were in the alternative ideological tendencies. So, for example, some technological breakdown of of Soviet society based on totally different ideological premises. So that was totalitarian state obliging the traditional Russian people that didn't want to get into this technological trend that was very balanced society without this special will to dominate, to develop, to discover something new. But that was obliged by the totalitarian system, and that has given huge results. For example, the rockets, the space technology that we use now. So we have, during this common era, have developed much more than during capitalist 3 decades of the liberalism. So that was total destruction in our country. Liberalism has brought with itself the total devastation of the economy, and not the kind of the impulse to create something. Everything was created during the totalitarian Soviet time. And if we compare that with the achievements or technological achievements of Nazi Germany, so Soviet Union and West, we will look very, very modest comparing with this huge and very crazy breakdown of German racist Nazi technology. So we never confess that, but impact of their huge expansion during 12 years. So they gave much more impulse to the technological development than liberalism. So that is just a remark. And the second point, I think that modern paleomodernity, the concept, very interesting, paleomodernity. So there is two way to interpret the modernity as such. So as maybe I'm wrong, but you, Mr. Land, you have different phase in your philosophy. I've tried to study your texts and books. So in the first stage, maybe I'm wrong. So you was a kind of advocate of this new modernity and acceleration of modernity, new modernity, until the last results of the passage from the humanity to this hyper technological order. And that was a kind of concentration of the same impulse, but led or brought to the logical consequence. That was very, very consequent and very, very complete and metaphysically beautiful, I would say, very nice vision. And in the last phase, maybe I'm wrong, so you advocate much more this kind of moderation in that. So the liberalism, paleomodernity, that was right thing, and new globalist development, this internalization, universalization, is something exaggerated, or some outside kind of hubris, in Greek hubris. So when you come out of the limits of natural limits. So, but there are in your personal case, we have two forms of the interpretation of the modernity, and I agree rather with your first phase, when there was a kind of description of the modernity as the project of the complete dehumanization of humanity, and a way to come to some outside of the earth, of the humanity, of the history, to some very, very ominous, a bit frightening perspective of the future. with the total replacement by the humanity and by life on the earth by something completely different, and that was very, very, very beautiful explained, I think. So that in your early version of your philosophy, there was the kind of line of modernity pointing to total self-destruction and self overcoming of the life, of the history, of the time. And that, in that sense, the paleomodernity served just as the first stage of the same project. And that, as traditionalists, I agree. So it seems that you were completely right. But there is the other version. And that, I think, is very close to MAGA. So Make America Great Again movement tries to separate paleoliberalism, paleomodernity, paleocapitalism from the neo-capitalism, neo-modernity, neo-progressive. So both
positions of yours are very, very pertinent, I would say. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm just going to say that insofar as there is that separation, it's because, there's an interference pattern because of the fact that modernity is meaning for us simultaneously these very different things. And by paleo-modernity, I'm trying to hold in using exactly the same thing, paleoliberalism, in the sense it's the empty summit, it's decentralized systems, it's decentralized social technology, and from that acceleration. And in that sense, I think all the things that now are objects of enthusiasm for accelerationists, techno accelerationists, are the same. You know, I mean, AI is accelerating, blockchain technology is accelerating. You know, the internet, I guess, is accelerating only in the sense that it's passing over into those things. And that's because it still is essentially on this model of decentralized systems without authoritative overcoding by some higher instance. And so on that level, I have totally not become a kind of advocate of moderation. It's only that there's a whole bunch of these other things that we mean by modernity, which I think you predominantly mean when you talk about modernity, to do that I don't think are at all liberal in any sense other than wearing it as a skin suit, to do with the hypertrophy of the state, the hypertrophy of bureaucracy, in its final phases, this woke lunacy that's the most culturally ruinous process that's ever happened in our history. And, you know, obviously, insofar as that's what one is meaning by modernity, then it's not only a question of slowing it down, but of trying to completely get off that train.